So I wanted to make a video of all the vehicles that I have had and regret selling and look back on with regret for all the different reasons that I have. Every vehicle that I've ever gotten rid of, I regret in some way. And I thought I'd share all those with you. I thought it'd be kind of a comical way to start Sunday morning. I'm going to post this at 5 a.m. on Sunday, so you guys enjoying coffee can laugh with me about my prior history of vehicles and where they all went. And I've always wondered what happened to all of them. Maybe someday I'll stumble in, because of the YouTube channel, into who owns them now. It'd be really cool to find out if they still are alive. Some of them I know, I'm sure, are dead. So we're going to start off with the most dreaded car of my entire existence. I learned how to drive in a 1998 Kia Sophia. It was black, had aluminum wheels, and it had a lot of problems. My dad actually had two Kia Sophias. He had a class action lawsuit brake testing case that he had these two cars. He went down to, one was in Virginia, one was in, I think, Louisiana, and did a bunch of vehicle testing on different roads that people claimed that they had excessive brake wear issues with the Kia Sophia. And then part of his assignment was to continue driving it. Well, he took that a little bit to the extreme, and we drove these test cars for years. I took and they were first rigged out with all kinds of really cool telemetry on the brake pads, the rotors, different temperatures in different places, and the vehicle was being tracked for how hard it was being driven, transmission temp, engine temp, and then they do a series of runs and find out how brake temperatures were affected by different braking parameters and whatever. It was really cool, and when I was young, this was really cool to watch. So the Kia, the 97 had a lot of issues, and that was parked, and we ended up selling that to a friend who fixed a couple things and ended up driving it for years. We had the 98, and it had a lot more issues, but it was in better physical shape. We carried a 2x4 as its parking brake because park didn't work. Sometimes the starter motor wouldn't engage right, and we didn't want to put any money into it. So the 2x4 that was your parking brake doubled as the way to get the starter motor to work. Sometimes you'd hit the starter motor with the 2x4 to get it to work, which was pretty darn hilarious. And it was more fun when the car was parked on a hill and park didn't work. So when you took your parking brake off to tap your starter motor to get the car to start, sometimes you have to hold the car in place with your leg. It was just a trip. The car wouldn't start later on, and this was obviously a neutral safety switch, but it wasn't actually the switch. It was some other issue with it. We replaced the neutral safety switch. It would not start in park, neutral, drive, reverse. It would start somewhere in between neutral and reverse, and what you had to do was hold the key forward with your one hand and then use the shifter and move it back and forth between neutral and reverse to find that moment when it would click. And if you didn't quite hold it there when it did click, it would start. But if you didn't hold it there, it would stop clicking, and then you'd have to find a new position that it would work. And it seemed to change every single time. It was the most ridiculous. Oh my God, I hated this car. But we put like 130,000 miles between my dad and I on this car. I did a lot of my driver's training in. Obviously, this car would never have worked for driver's ed. I drove my dad's Duramax on a snow day. We'll talk about the Duramax more. But that's what I took my driver's test in, because the Kia would definitely not suffice. But I learned how to drive in the Kia Sophia, and I have very fond memories of it. So hopefully you can hear that coming across in this conversation. So in 2007, my dad surprised me. I was snowboarding with my cousin and my mom up at Nub's Knob in Boyne Highlands, and I got home, and suddenly there was a 2007 classic Duramax parked in the driveway. I don't have any pictures of it. I don't think my dad has any pictures of it left over. This was a long time ago. He bought it new. So it was 2007. Before I probably had a flip phone, but I wasn't taking pictures of trucks. I don't have any pictures of it. I wish I did. So the one that you're seeing right now is just one that looks exactly the same. It was that red. It was an LT model, black trim, black door handles, four-door short bed, four-wheel drive. It was on stock tires, had those awesome aluminum wheels that looked really pretty. My dad had that until about 105,000 miles when he sold it, and he didn't end up getting a new truck. And that's part of a later conversation. We're going to talk about my dad's 2012 Denali HD. That was his next new truck. So Duramax, that was his pride and joy. I distinctly remember when he got it. He refused to tow with it until 1,000 miles, because that was what GM said, and the salesman told him that the Allison transmission would probably blow up if he drove it before 1,000 miles. It is what it is. My dad followed it to the hilt. So he drove it exactly 1,001 miles before hooking it to a big red trailer, and we helped a gentleman that was my dad's lifelong friend. He had a business fall through after having a massive stroke and lost the business, whatever. We went and helped him empty out the business. That was my first time being in that truck and towing with it. Before, my dad had always had 5.4 Econolines, and they were not very good at towing. They were not very good at a lot of things, but, you know, some fond memories nonetheless. And so getting the Duramax was a revelation into what it was like to tow with a heavy-duty pickup truck and with a lot of power, having four-wheel drive for the first time after getting the Econoline stuck many times when we were using it. And of course, my dog is just rolling around. I'm sorry for the background noise, but I don't really want to refilm this, so we're going to do it in one take. Layla, enough. Silly dog. So the Duramax was a revelation for me of seeing what a turbo diesel was capable of, and that truck in general. It had a lot of problems. It was getting fixed all the time. Transmission started slipping at 32,000 miles, and this truck was driven by an older gentleman. My dad drove like an 80-year-old gentleman when he was 55, okay? He drove like an old lady. And it was never overloaded. It was never... it was always used tow haul mode, everything else. It's just that Allison's, I'm not a big fan of Allison's, but I have a hugely fond memory of that truck. It had rust started in the frame, rust was starting in the fenders, even though it was perfectly taken care of and drove in the minimum in the snow. And he just took meticulous care of it. It never had bigger tires on it. It was just always stock. The only thing he had was a set of snow tires on a set of Steelies, which was pretty cool. Well, it was driven in the snow, but we were careful with it, I guess. Later in its life, it definitely got driven in the snow. So he traded it, or he got rid of it. He sold it, and I think it was 2010. So he ended up going 2 years without having a new truck, and we were using my Excursion. Oh, no, it wasn't 2010. It must have been 2012 or 13 when we got rid of it. You know, something like that, 2012. Whatever it was, we were using my Excursion to tow with in the interim between him getting rid of that truck and him getting a newer truck. And we found out one of the things was not having a new truck, trying to keep an older truck on the road sometimes bites you. So it ended up getting into him getting the Denali. And we'll talk about that. But his Duramax exposed my mind to the capabilities of HG trucks and diesels in general. And it solidified my hate for GM-IFS. We had, even on stock tires, had some tie rod and CV issues. The oil filter housing cracked twice, and left the truck with oil dumped all over the driveway. The ABS unit failed. My dad darn near hit the garage with the truck. So there were several things that weren't very good about the truck, but I do miss it. It was a cool truck. It would have been fun to modify it and upgrade it. Keep in mind, it had 100,000 miles on it when it was less or about 6 years old. So it was a high mile truck. So it's not like it was it was in any way going to be collectible or anything like that. It already had 100,000 miles on it. It was less than or about 6 years old. So it was going to continue being a high mile truck. It would probably, if we still had it, it would probably have 300,000 or 400,000 miles now. Probably would be through multiple transmissions, and probably Duramax would need to be rebuilt, or at least injectors done. So if we still had it, it would have taken a lot to keep it going this long. So I guess it is what it is, but it was a cool truck. And when it was new, it was an okay truck. I think that very quickly trucks became better than what that truck offered. Brake-wise, GM was selling small brakes in 2007 when Ford had big brakes on 05 and up. Now, granted, the 6.0 Power Stroke sucked and 6.4 was worse, but they had a better chassis. So, and my Cummins, my 03 Cummins had way better brakes than my dad's Duramax did. And obviously the Duramax was a little faster when it was stock. I quickly put a tune on my Cummins. We quickly found out that my Cummins was a better work truck with a couple modifications than the Duramax was stock. He ended up deciding to get out of it, and eventually he ended up getting a new truck, and we'll keep talking about that. So that's your spiel on the old Duramax. So it's high time that we talk about, I only have one picture of my G8. I can't believe it. Of all the, I just didn't take a lot of pictures of it. I've never been very good at doing that. I loved my G8. I got my G8. I had just been accepted to Kettering. I had just gotten my driver's license, and I walked dogs and I mowed lawn, and I mowed a lot of lawn. I actually had a good bit of savings from walking dogs for years, mowing lawns for years. I started doing that way early. And no, I'm not telling you that I bought the car entirely myself. My parents helped me buy the car. But I put 12 or 13 grand of my own money toward it. It was a really good car. I loved it. So I paid for like half of it, okay? It was used. It was a 2009, and this was in 2012. So it was used, had like 30,000 miles on it. I put probably 20 or 30,000 miles on it. I got in a lot of trouble with it. I got pulled over a lot with it. It was very clear that I was too immature I never hurt anybody, I never crashed the car, never put a scratch on. In fact, I took really good care of the car. Didn't drive in the snow. I took the car out of storage to take that picture for the high school yearbook because I didn't think to take a picture of it in the summertime, and the yearbook was being published in the wintertime, you had to get the pictures in. It was around Christmas or whatever. So that picture that you're seeing, I was not driving in the snow. The G8 GT was a really good car. It handled really well. It had okay brakes. It had a good engine, good power, got really good fuel economy. So the downfall of it is having the cylinder deactivation, which is obviously hard in the lifters, hard in the cam. But the car got phenomenal fuel economy. It was a really good car dynamically. And from a driver's perspective, it was a great car to daily drive. And I truly, truly miss that car. It was not the fastest. And at the time, I kind of had looked at, do I put heads cam intake on? I also looked at big brake kits and looking at different wheels and tires to get a wider wheel on it, to put wider tires on to help it hook up a little bit better. I looked at a single-piece drive shaft, like when you put more power at it, the two-piece drive shafts eventually going to fail. Then found out that the rear end wouldn't take a crazy amount of power without a little bit of upgrading, putting the CTSV diff in it, and it just got to be like, okay, so looking back on it, I wish I would have kept the car, kept it for what it was, put in a small cam to remove MDS, put a tune on it, and enjoy the car as it was, because it was a unbelievable car that I adored. 4 seats and a trunk with it being quick, put exhaust on it. That would have been really nice. It already had a colder intake on it, but it was like an SLP sort of colder intake, whatever. But a tune, nice tires, and enjoy it for what it was. A full exhaust would have been nice to make it sound good, open up the exhaust a little bit. 3-inch exhaust, stainless exhaust, Y-pipe, or X-pipe, whatever, just make it sound really good, maximize the exhaust flow. If I wouldn't have looked at it trying to make it a race car, I would have realized what a special car it was and how much I should have just kept it, because I would have enjoyed it for many, many years, and I searched around, and you're going to see different cars that I dabbled in. Now, I sold the G8. I'm sure I lost a little bit of money. I traded it in so my dad could get his new Denali HD. We owned the car outright. I traded in the car so he could get his new truck. And I had no problem with that. And I don't remember losing very much on it. I think I paid like 30. Now, I think it was $26,900 is what I paid for it when I got it. And I think I traded it in for $24,000. Like, I literally lost a couple grand and enjoyed the G8, put a lot of miles on it, had a lot of fun, saved a lot of gas because it got like 34 miles a gallon when you're driving it nice. And even when you're driving like a jerk, it was still getting 24. So it was a very special car, very good car. If anybody's in the market for a G8 GT, they should definitely look at one. The GXP, you could get the 6.2 and the manual trans. It was a really cool car. Brembo brakes. I think it was lowered, had wider tires, had really good looking wheels. That was a great car, the GXP. It's tragic that you can't just go out and get. These were better cars dynamically than a Charger and a Challenger. They're a lot lighter. The Zeta architecture was just a lot better. The G8 GT was a very special car, and I have extremely fond memories of missing it. To find one right now that isn't either really high miles or rusty, it's hard to do. Unfortunately, it's a car that is kind of gone and past, and I'm not sure I'm going to find one that nice again. You can get a like 40, 50,000 mile GXP with 6.2 and manual trans. You're looking like 50 grand now. It's still a pretty good car for the money. Pretty good. A CTSV Gen 2 would be a better buy in a similar price range. Honestly, you're getting an LSA, stronger rear end, like better brakes. Wheels, tires are better. That CTSV Gen 2 is a heck of a good car, and it's kind of the companion step-up car from the G8 GT. Similar architecture, both on Zeta platform. They just were really good cars. So that's my thoughts on G8 GT. I do truly miss it. I should have kept it for what it was and kept it, enjoyed it, put a lot of miles on it when I had it. All right, we're getting a little bit more into recent time, and I have a lot more pictures of basically everything that follows. So thank you for toughing out a single picture with me voicing over it. I'll try and there's more pictures for each of these vehicles. We're going to talk about now the 2012 Denali HD. It was a 2500. It was a really, really great truck, and we really enjoyed it. We had realized in having the Cummins and having the Excursion be a couple times a little bit sketchy. I believe it was the dead of summertime that we got the Denali late in 2012. And the Excursion, the Cummins had already shown points of weakness. And we'd already had to service them a lot. We had some longer trips ahead. One of the pictures here, we took down to Louisiana for work and picked up a motorcycle that my dad had in an impound down in the police. It wasn't impounded for bad reasons. It was impounded because it was a case on a highway patrol situation. And the bike actually survived Katrina. We still have the bike and we rebuilt it. It'd be cool to get that running. It was really dilapidated, and we drove down there, did a different case, drove back up with the bike. The longer distance drives with older trucks, and even back then when the Excursion and the Cummins were not that old, when they're over 150,000 miles or getting close to 150,000, basically all your trucks are going to start having reliability issues that are going to start impacting their ability to do really long distance drives. If you don't want to have downtime or get stuck, sometimes it works out better to get a new truck, and the Denali HD was one of those. He didn't want to buy into the new DPF setup, and it's probably a good thing that he did. The LML had some early issues with DPF-related issues and urea and issues with pistons and cranks. LML's had some issues. We decided to get the 6.0, and we really liked it. I already liked the 6.0 and had worked with the 6.0 with my buddy's parents' truck, and he had one. I ended up getting one a little bit later down the road. This was my first 6.0 that I personally owned, and I guess my dad personally owned, but, you know, we shared a lot of vehicles in the same way. My Cummins is mine, my Excursion is mine. My dad shares them and shared them when we were daily driving them. He was sharing them as well, and I had no problem with that. So, you know, father, son, sharing vehicles, I have no problem with that. How it all works out, shakes down in the end. I do what I can to make his life easier. He does what he can to make my life easier, kind of, you know, sharing things along the line. I think it's kind of wrong to look at things like, oh, it's only my dad's, or oh, it's only mine. I just don't really think that. If my dad needs something of mine, he can have it. It doesn't matter what its value is, he can have it, you know. But the Denali HD had great brakes, great chassis, good towing dynamics. For the time, the gas engine that it had was really strong. The LY6 was a really strong 360 horsepower, 380 foot-pounds of torque, if I'm not mistaken. Strong engine for the time, good engine, and as you can see the picture of towing the powerboat with the Denali HD, it was a good truck. I liked it, and honestly, we put 100 and something thousand miles on it before he got rid of it, and didn't do too bad on it. Because it was later in 2012 when we got it, we had pretty good discounts on the truck. Even though it was a pretty premium truck, it was pretty heavily discounted. So we did pretty good when we traded it in and put a lot of miles on it. Didn't have almost any problems with that truck other than rust. Back bumper rusted out. That was the only that I can think of warranty issue that truck ever had. It was one of the most reliable trucks that we've ever had in terms of not needing to have any service from new. So that was a good truck. So this is, I don't have any pictures when we first got it. It was a 2001 Ford Focus automatic 2-liter split port SPI. So SPI is what it's called, split port injection engine. It was a car that was given to me because my dad and I drove out to save a gentleman a lawyer that we work with. His son broke another car at Michigan State, and he couldn't go get him. We drove out there with our trailer, picked him up, picked his car up, drove him back to his dad's house, unloaded the car, and his dad, for our trouble, gave us this car that his son had already blown up. 2.0 SPIs have a problem where when the heads were made, they didn't put enough press where the valve seat presses in to the head. And when you overheat the engine, the valve seat drops out of the head, the valve comes up and smacks it, breaks it, the engine ingests the valve and the seat, and you end up with a trash can motor. It's a common problem. They have fixed heads now for it. We got given the car broken, not running, trashed. We put it back together. Got a junkyard, 2 pistons, because 2 pistons got eaten up. One had the failure. It went up the intake valve in terms of when the piston came up, it shoved parts up into the intake. The other engine sucked in the piece, or the other cylinder sucked in the pieces of that broken one, screwed up that cylinder. So it got a new head with the fixed problems, which was about $1,000. Not cheap to fix it. This is an example of fixing an old vehicle where you're putting money somewhere where you're never going to recover it. I mean, this is a junk car, and it probably took $1,200 to fix the motor by the time we got new bearings, new head, a new piston rod from a junkyard, put it all back together in frame. So left everything in there, took the oil pan off, put a new timing belt on, put it all back together, and we drove this thing for about 150,000 miles of us using it. In the time of using it, and we used it to save money, of course, on fuel because it got great fuel economy, my dad got T-boned, and we did some cool, we did a little bit of polishing, we put it back together. I retarded the cam timing just a little bit to get a little bit more top-end power, which was pretty cool. Yeah. What did I retard? Yeah, I advanced the cam timing a little bit to make more torque in the mid-range. That's what I did. I advanced cam timing a little bit to make more torque in the mid-range, and the engine ran pretty good. And it was very, very reliable. At some point during it, my dad got T-boned by a Chrysler 300, and the guy ran off and whatever. So those are the pictures you see of the car damaged. Well, it sat for a couple of years, and we were all upset about it because it got really screwed up. I used the Powerwagon's winch to pull out the body panels and got it to where it looked halfway decent, and it certainly looked decent once the car got dirty. And then my buddy and I got interested in screwing around with rally cars, or in this case, I made a light bar mount and bolted it to the crash bar of the front bumper. Let me tell you, that steel that's in the crash bar of that Ford Focus, oh my God, is that the hardest stuff ever. It took the very best drill bits I could buy to drill through that, and it was still a flipping nightmare. But that was cross-bolted to the bumper, so it was a really strong headlight mount, had really good bright LED headlights on the front, and we went through 2 rear brake assemblies, the drum brakes and the parking brake. When you yanked it, of course, ran the drum brakes. I went through 2 sets of pads and of shoes and drums because of e-braking that thing around corners. Yes, it was automatic. It was really slow, but man, was it a fun car to drive. I had so much fun driving that car. Put a set of 15-inch wheels and snow tires on it, and they were Mastercraft Glacier Grip 1s. Those were the best handling gravel tires I've ever had, and we had so much fun. He had an Aveo. We called it the... he had a Caliber too. We called it the Raliber, and then the Aveo, we called it, it was a Daewoo, and Aveo was a Daewoo. So we modified his car too. He built a fiberglass wing for it. We just had a lot of fun, We were young, and just a great time. I missed that car, not really for any real good reason other than I had a lot of fun in that car. All right, so I really started to miss my G8 GT at some point, and I decided to order a 2014 Mustang Track Pack, totally stripped out, cloth seats, no options, literally no options besides Track Pack. It was $32,900 out the door. I ordered it, it got delivered, and it was a really good car. It had Brembo brakes, and for the time, strong engine, good brakes, great handling. Had 373 gear, factory Torsen diff. It was a really good car. I had a lot of fun owning it. I drove it like 50,000 miles or something like that. It saved me a lot of fuel because the car got wonderful fuel economy, like high 20s. Really great car. And, of course, I got myself in some trouble in it, never crashed it, never hurt anything, never hurt anyone, just got pulled over speeding tickets, and it was very clear that I still wasn't mature enough to own a quicker car. And the other thing is I kind of looked at it, I was like, if I wanted to make more power, because eventually you get bored with whatever amount of power you have, you always want more. And obviously the car sucked in the snow, it wasn't that good in the rain. It was kind of good. It was a one-trick pony car. It was a one-trick pony car, and I liked it. It was a good car. The MT82 was a terrible manual transmission. I was really spoiled with driving Tremec TR6060s, just so much better of a feel from a driver's perspective. To upgrade it, to put wider wheels, to put wider tires, it already had good suspension. To put a supercharger on it, really the only thing you're going to do with a 5.0 besides make it spin more and make more top-end power and lose bottom-end power is you boost it. By the time you spend that money to do that, it needs a clutch. Transmission is still junk, so then you spend a bunch of money either to swap into Magnum XL or to upgrade the MT82, which is still junk MT82 even after you spend thousands of dollars on it. It just didn't make a lot of sense. $1,000 for a carbon fiber or an aluminum drive shaft. It just didn't make any sense. So I enjoyed the car for what it was. I did a little bit better job of enjoying it for a longer period of time stock. Never modified the car at all. Just daily drove it, saved a bunch of miles on my trucks, allowed us to service my trucks and only use them for work or for towing and weekends and whatever. So I did a lot of commuting in this car for school and for work, and it was a good car. I have fond memories of it. I miss it it was a good car at a good time, and I had a lot of fun in perspective. It was not the best example of a performance car, really just from the MT82 perspective. It had Good enough brakes, good enough handling, good engine, good build quality. I fit in the car well, being tall and being a bigger guy, I still fit in the car really well. Overall, a really good car. But to make it go to the next level, you end up spending a bunch of money on a car that still isn't the next level. In my opinion, you'd be better off just going out and buying a Shelby and starting off. If you're going to have a Mustang, buy a Shelby, and you already have a car that has the perceived value of being, or the nobility of being a Shelby, and it already has a TR6060, already has an engine that's already supercharged. So then when you put a better blower on, it's already made to be a supercharged motor. If you wanted to build it, at least you're putting the money into a car that I think is worth putting money into. That's kind of where I was. Eventually I sold it and I got something else, and that's the next thing we're going to talk about. So it was getting to be winter. My other daily drivers for the wintertime were my Cummins, which always needed to have service done to it because, well, it's a Dodge, and my Excursion, which was a V10, and I was commuting to Holland from Detroit and Flint for school and where my parents lived, and so I was burning a lot of fuel in the Excursion, and I decided to buy a Focus ST. I went and looked at cars, and then I sat in the Focus ST. I'm like, it's a really nice car. It fits me well. I knew I already liked Focuses from the white Focus that I had that we've already talked about. And I decided to try my hand with a manual transmission, 6-speed, turbocharged, inline-4, performance hot hatch. It was my very first actual hot hatch, as opposed to a sedan that was not hot at all. And I loved it. I missed that car greatly. I put a lot of miles on it. I think I put like 70,000 miles on it, which I get maybe isn't a crazy amount of miles, but it was 70,000 miles in like a year and a half. It was a 2016, I think. And it was a really great car. I had a lot of fun with it. I did a little bit of rallying around, put road armor flaps on it, mud flaps, and kind of treated it similar to the Focus, the other Focus within reason. I wasn't quite as abusive, but they got jumped a few times on dirt roads and whatever. It was a really great car. Had a lot of fun with it, and I did consider, what if I put a cage in it? What if I did some rally stuff to it? Whatever. And what it came down to was, at that point in my life, I used it for the period of time that I really needed. I bought that car when I really needed high fuel economy, wintertime. It was a good car in the snow, great car in the snow, great car in the rain, got me through wintertime commuting to Holland and back, went to Christmas and Thanksgiving, through snowstorms, New Year's, all that good stuff. It was a really good car, and it let me leave my pickup truck at my cottage where my friends were, and then I commuted with the Focus back to the pickup truck, and then used the pickup truck for pickup truck stuff or Excursion stuff, and that was amazing. Hugely fond memories of both the utility of that car, good cornering, good braking. Obviously, they weren't super top-of-the-line brakes. They faded from higher speed stops to 0, but they worked really well for everything else. Really fun car on twisty roads, and it was a 4-season performance car. That's one of the reasons I love hot hatches. Front-wheel drive even. I love front-wheel drive. I don't have any problem with it at all. It means that your performance car becomes a 4-season performance car instead of a 2.5-season performance car. When the ground gets cold, when the tires get cold with a rear-wheel drive car with a lot of power, it's going to step out. Not that isn't fun, but it isn't fast, and it isn't confidence-inspiring. And when there's dust and gravel and whatever from wintertime on the roads in the spring, performance cars can step out on you in corners or whatever. Having a front-wheel drive car has its benefits, and one of them is all-season performance and handling, and I really like the Focus RS Focus ST, and have really fond memories. Spoiler alert, later on I bought a Focus RS. If you want to see content with my Focus RS, I still own my Focus RS. I haven't driven it in a couple of years. It's been in storage because I've been doing, parent stuff. It's been stored in the garage, nice and safe. If you guys want to see Focus RS content, let me know, and we will make Focus RS content right now with a car that I already own. But Focus ST, definitely missed that car. Probably should have kept it and enjoyed getting 25 plus miles a gallon commuting with a hot hatch. It was great. Alrighty, enter the Powerwagon. My dad had already gotten a manual transmission Dodge Cummins G56 that he had ordered. And so we were good in the towing department. Had a good towing truck. Well, there it is right there. Had a very good tow. Well, you're going to see it. I don't know how I'm going to edit this, but eventually you're going to see the Cummins and the Powerwagon sitting next to each other, okay? We had a really good towing truck, and that meant, in my mind, and it worked out great, and I do miss my Powerwagon. One of the vehicles that I past owned, the GHGT, the Focus ST, and the Powerwagon, the three I really miss the most. The Powerwagon was a good tow vehicle, but it was unbelievable off-road. I did tons and tons and tons of camping trips, off-roading trips, trail riding. I used the Powerwagon to the fullest extent. I owned it for about 80,000 miles or so, and getting to the end of warranty, I broke 3 power steering pumps with it. Other than that, the truck was really good. I can't think of anything else I broke on it. Didn't really like the 66 RFE was a little squirrely. It was starting to show some signs of maybe it wouldn't keep lasting forever. But axles are perfect condition. The underrated reason why the Powerwagon is amazing. First of all, factory winch, awesome. Second reason, the underbody protection on the Powerwagon is stout. It is killer. It is set up ready to play off-road. And for that reason, it was a really great truck. I started doing more towing as I started getting more into four-wheelers. My buddy got a side-by-side. I was not owning a side-by-side yet, but was really considering getting a side-by-side. That didn't come until 2022. But we did a lot more towing trips with the Powerwagon, as you're going to see. I think a picture of the Powerwagon with the trailer. I think I still have one of those. Maybe not. We'll see. But the Powerwagon I started doing more trips with the enclosed trailer with Power Sport toys in it, and the Powerwagon exposed itself as not being as good a tow rig as my 2003 Cummins or my dad's 2016 Cummins, and I was doing more towing and off-roading with off-road products, dirt bike and ATVs, and therefore my interest transitioned despite really using the off-road potential of the Powerwagon in the first portion of the ownership. In the second portion, I wanted a better tow vehicle, and then that's where the 2019 6.7 came in. And I'm glad that I got that when I did, because it was a really good weekend warrior truck, and that's what we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, or soon. But just as a final thought, I think someday I'm going to end up back in or having a Powerwagon, because that is bar none the highest performing factory delivered off-road HD truck, and it still is. It still will be. The winch, the underbody protection, the factory lockers, sway bar disconnect, the stance of that truck was perfect at stock height. You could run 35s at stock height. I was running 33s because that best mixture of on-road and off-road performance that didn't compromise too much on-road. In the long run, if I would have kept that truck, I would have had to have the 66 RFE rebuilt because it was going to break. I would have put full either Thurin or Carly suspension on it, put it on 37s, re-geared it to 488s, and I would still be wheeling it probably to this day if I still had it. But I couldn't afford to have a diesel truck and a gas truck at that time, and therefore I needed to, and I wanted to have the towing capability that the 6.4 was just not giving me, and not only the towing capability, but the range. That truck towing even the black race car trailer that you're going to see in a minute with 3 or 4 quads in it, or a couple side-by-sides or whatever, the range on that truck was like 200 miles or less at the fuel light. It was not good. So I wanted more range. I wanted more power. I didn't want to be waiting around for the truck to get up to speed. I wanted, and this was at a time in my life where I wanted that high-performance diesel horsepower, and that's what I got. So next up was ordering my 2019 F250 6.7 Power Stroke. And at the time, the F250 with the 6.7 was exactly what I wanted. And as you can see, there's kind of an evolution here of needs versus wants, and having the right vehicle for the right time in my life. And therefore, there's some regrets, because as things change, sometimes you end up revisiting that earlier point in your life later on in your life. And that's kind of, I think, how a lot of people's lives go. And for me, because my life has revolved so much around having vehicles, working with vehicles, recreating with vehicles, they're kind of intertwined with how my life evolved, and that's kind of a funny thing. So the 6.7 Power Stroke was bought, as I said, because I wanted more range, better towing performance for long distance road trips, heading up north for recreational weekends, towing boats for, with my dad, going on powerboat trips, going on sailing trips, and towing recreational trailers. By that I mean enclosed trailers with Power Sport toys in it. The 6.7 filled that need. It was a really great truck, and I really liked it. And onward then came, once I stopped doing those long-distance drives and with high frequency or high need of it happening quickly, because we were on a time schedule between people staying at work late on a Friday and needing to be back for whether I had class at 8 a.m. on Mondays, which I normally did, well, wait a minute. I didn't have, I was out of school, okay, but 6.7, but I had friends that were still in school. So we were planning trips around their school and their work schedule, my work schedule. So the 6.7 filled a need, and eventually I ended up outgrowing the chassis capability or the rating capability of the 250. And then I wanted to get a 350, and then I decided, because I wasn't in such a rush, that I get the 7.3, and that's been a very positive thing for me so far. And those of you who know my channel, because of maybe it's starting with a 6.7 and getting the 7.3, or only have just came along because videos made with the 7.3, there's a whole history here of what led me down the path of the things that I like, the experience that I've had, the failures that I've had, and we've kind of covered those a little bit in this video. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. It's long, and hopefully you are sipping your coffee, having a good Sunday morning, or maybe you're catching this at any other time of the day or any other time of the week later in the year, or maybe this is years later when you're watching this. Comment down below what your vehicle history looks like if you want to, if you enjoyed the video, and if it's a different year entirely or a different time period. Let me know what time period you're watching it in, and it'd be interesting if there's anything that you can think of that would be like an epiphany moment of you're watching this now, it's 10 years later, and maybe the channel has electric vehicles on it. Comment that too, or hey, now you're driving electric vehicles, you nitwit. I don't know. You never know where the time will take you, and that's kind of the conclusion of this video. The time took me in a bunch of different directions, and the right things happened at the right time, and I look back on some of it and I regret some of it, like losing the G8 and not having the Powerwagon right now and not having the G8 right now are two things that make me a little bit sad looking back on it and seeing these pictures. Take care all. I hope you enjoyed the video.